Good afternoon, everyone. I'm very happy to be with you once again on the Saturday afternoon. I hope you can all hear me. I hope you can all see me because we've got some interesting information to share with you today. So, just a little bit of an introduction very shortly, and then we'll get started. I'm going to tell you a little bit about myself and then give you a brief introduction to what we're doing today. And then, of course, this is going to be a really interactive experience. I'm going to welcome your comments and your questions and all those interesting tidbits that you're sitting on regarding the topic today. So I think, as you know, I've been presenting a few of the other webinars. My name is Luan, and I greet you from the rather not so sunny South Africa today, specifically Cape Town. I would like to know where you are and where you're watching from today. So please, in the chat, drop us a message to tell us where you are and also, very importantly, your name. And while we wait for those names to come in, I will tell you a little bit about myself. So, as mentioned, my name is Luan. I've been with the TEFL Academy for a very long time, but even longer than that, I've been an English teacher for over 13 years. I'm a language practitioner and also a Cambridge examiner. So my relationship with English and TEFL, it started a long time ago, and I've loved every minute of it. So I'm very excited to share what I know about this topic with you today. I'm very excited to share this journey with you and happy to have you here. So just a little bit of housekeeping before we get started. Today's webinar is, of course, as with all our other webinars, on a very specific topic. So I will be going through the content, and then near the end of the session, I will invite you to type your questions and your comments in the chat section of your screen. I will only be answering questions related to today's topic. So if you do find that you have questions outside of what we're discussing today, please send it to tutor support, where we are more than happy to assist you. And then later on, when I do invite you to type your questions, do so in the question or the chat section of your screen. I will encourage you to do so only once I've opened up Q&A. The reason being, if you do type a question beforehand, I might miss it later on. And if I know the answer, I would like to answer as many questions as possible. All right, so I think we'll get started immediately. And as mentioned, the topic is very specific today, but also very exciting. But before we get into that, let's say hi to who we've got here today. I see names coming in. Rachel, hello, Rachel. Nice to have you. Sarah, hello. And don't forget to tell us where you're from, where you're sitting today. It's always exciting. I think the world of TEFL, because travel is at the heart of TEFL. You really meet people from all over the world. So it's great to hear where you're from. So Zaren is from Johannesburg, South Africa. Hello, neighbor. And then CG from Pretoria, South Africa. Mike, hello. Barushka from South Africa too. Nice to see you here. Emma from the USA, hello. John from Edinburgh, hi there. Rachel is from South Wales. Welcome, Rachel. And then Lijuan is from Pretoria, South Africa. I hope I'm saying your name correctly. Sarah, you said hi earlier, but thank you for letting us know you're from Turkey, and so welcome. And Asha, also from the United States, hello to you. Sandra from Pretoria, South Africa, hello. Tracy from South Africa too, welcome. Mike is in Iran today. Thank you for sharing that with us. And then we have Petunia from Cape Town, hello. And David from Trinidad and Tobago. Welcome to you, David. Caldo is from Hungary. Wow, the names keep flooding in. Abbas is from Johannesburg, South Africa. Anna from Brazil, very welcome. And then Petunia, you said that, yeah, you're in Cape Town too, and it's lovely to meet you too. So today's topic, very exciting. Now, here's the thing. For many of us, AI, today's topic, is uncharted territory, a new field, straight off the pages, I feel, of a sci-fi novel. And today's webinar is an introduction to get us all thinking about the possibilities and the consequences of using AI. The first time I will admit, the first time I heard about AI, it was in books and in movies, and the idea of it all seemed so far-fetched. At least it was for me. And it was right where it belonged, in movies and in books. Well, a few years later, we're having a webinar on AI and the impact on teaching, and here we are. AI has become a reality. So today's webinar, I have to admit, is not to answer all your questions and not to tell you everything there is to know about AI and its place in teaching, but to share what we have researched, what we know, and then to explore this concept together. And I hope that's okay. So I think the very first thing that we need to do is define AI. I think a lot of people know what it is, a lot of people are learning about the concept, but what is it when it goes home? Right. So AI is the simulation of human intelligence processes, but through machinery and especially computer systems. So performing all those intelligent functions that we have up to now been doing, well, now AI is taking over some of those responsibilities. And that's what it's all about. So it sounds amazing and scary all at the same time. And today we're pretty much going to explore how we feel about all of this, right? Okay, so let's move on. So when it comes to AI, I think a good thing to do is go back and really think about the history of AI. So the term artificial intelligence was coined by John McCarthy around 1955, 1956, when he held that very first academic conference on the subject. I think I would have loved to have been there just to listen and to hear where all this was headed. But the journey to understand if machines can truly think began way before that. I think about movies, books, movies like The Wizard of Oz, The Tin Man with No Heart. And I think, wow, AI, it's been around longer than we think, or at least the concept of AI. And the current decade really has seen the dawn of generative AI, a type of artificial intelligence that can produce content. And this, for me, is the most interesting and the most scary all at the same time, right? So we have computer programs, creating speech and vision recognition programs. Educators saw the potential for the use in education. And real AI research on classroom based AI only really started around 2015. So when I say the history of AI, yes, the phrase was coined in 1956. But the real history, the development of AI, the recognition of AI, well, it started pretty much yesterday. And I think that's why we're having this conversation, because everything around it is relatively new. Right, so when it comes to the history of AI, we think about the 2020s. Historical, the start of generative AI. And this is a type of technology that can produce new content, and the user types in a prompt, for example, or a command, example, a text, a phrase, or an image, and new content can be produced based on this command or this prompt. Various AI algorithms work behind the scenes and then return new content in response to the command, like an essay. You type in the essay you want to write, you type in the topic, you type in the word count, and AI algorithms go and do the work for you behind the scenes, and voila, you have an essay. So it sounds great for some, and it sounds like a nightmare for others. And I'm wondering how all our new teachers or our trainee teachers are feeling about this, having this conversation today. Right, so as mentioned, 2020 saw the start of the generative AI, where technology can produce content, and an example of this was prompt generated content. So type in the text, a phrase, an image, or even musical notes, any input that an AI system can process, and you're left with the results of what you need to produce. I was listening to the radio the other day, and the radio host played a little song, a little snippet, and said, "Hey, do you like Eminem's new song?" people called in and said, yeah, it sounds great, very much like his other stuff. And then the radio host revealed a little bit further on it was not Eminem at all. It was AI produced content. And we were all fooled. Right, so interesting conversation to have right about now. And then also in the 2020s, we saw mathematical algorithms, formula, calculating information based on previous input by users, and then return new content in response to the prompt. So I think putting it in layman's terms, just breaking it down, is that computers are doing the thinking for us. Computers are doing the research for us. Computers are gathering the stats, gathering the numbers, and then producing something that is, in most cases, or in some cases, accurate and useful. So, as mentioned earlier, the content can include essays, solutions to problems, realistic fakes created from pictures or audio of a person, and like the example I gave you a little bit earlier on with Eminem's new song. All right, so when we think about AI, there are a lot of apps and sites for educators. Most of them require a subscription. And these are the most well-known sites. So trainees, I would say trainee teachers, people joining today, make a note of these. See what they offer, see what they can do for you in a classroom. So on your screen, you should see a list of the most commonly used language-based AI programs. We have ChatGPT. I'm sure you've heard of this before. Google's Bard, Microsoft's Megatron. You've got TalkPal, GPG, Small Talk to Me, Google Duplex mimics human conversation. It's all quite interesting. And I think that as a teacher, and as a teacher who is going to be producing or using content in the classroom, do spend some time, Sunday afternoon, in the evening, and research a few of these. Go on, see if you can get sort of a trial period, see if you can get a free trial period, watch a few videos on them. I found it quite useful. I thought to myself while watching them, wow, I could certainly use a few of these programs in the classroom. And then I thought, oh, heck, so could my students. So we really do have to get to know what's out there, how teachers are able to use it, but also then, yes, what it would mean to a student being able to use it. So the abilities of language models such as ChatGPT, Google's Bard, and Microsoft's Megatron, for example, have been astonishing thus far. It is, however, early days for AI, and people are experiencing output issues like incorrect or distorted answers. But we'll look at that a little bit later on when we talk about the disadvantages of using AI both in the classroom and as a student. Right, so first things first, let's look at the perks, the advantages of using artificial intelligence. So yes, task preparation, language lesson preparation can be minimized, can be greatly reduced. An AI program can generate a song, a poem, a worksheet, an essay, or a narrative in just a few seconds. So, if you think about it as teachers, when we're looking for material to use in the classroom, it can take a long time. Even for myself as an experienced teacher, it takes hours sometimes to find just the right piece of material to use in the classroom. Now, this is, of course, if you want to use something that is not course book bound. You want to create a poem, maybe with specific vocabulary items that you're working on in the classroom, or you want to create a song with a grammar point that you've been looking at in the classroom, an essay, a story. So generally, if you're looking for something authentic on the internet, this could take a while. And as teachers, we have a lot of homework to do ourselves, and planning is part of this. So now here comes AI, and you can suddenly generate this content within seconds by typing in a prompt, typing in a command of what it is you need, and seconds later, there you are. And then also a chatbot can be used in the classroom or as a homework aid. And then also, yes, of course, AI can track and record student progress. I remember when the pandemic hit, and a lot of our schools were going online. So a lot of our schools were experimenting with AI as part of the learning experience. My son was at an online school, and very often, the school made use of AI programs to help and to facilitate this online learning experience that was relatively new at that stage and very much an emergency solution when the pandemic hit. So, those were some of the advantages, but those were not the only advantages. There are, of course, more. So, when it comes to your students and what they experience with AI, they can practice things like pronunciation and they can build fluency. The technology is relatively user friendly. It has to be. I think because they're trying to get teachers to use it, yes, but students too, and the general public. So the technology has got to be user friendly. If I think about myself, I'm not really a very technical slash technological person. So for me, if I'm going to explore a new program, it really has to be absolutely user friendly. And I'm sure many of you feel the same way out there today. And then also, the teacher can facilitate the use of AI in the classroom. You decide when to allow it and you decide when to hold it back. And then also a personalized learning experience. The program records user preferences and progress. Very often, student statistics are customized, easy to generate. So personalized learning plans are easy to design. So those are some of the advantages of AI, not only in the classroom, but during the planning process of a lesson, sourcing content, sourcing material. Right. So, of course, there are advantages, and then we've also got a few disadvantages. Right. So, we've got to discuss those today. And the technology, as I mentioned earlier, is relatively new. We're in the teething stages of AI. Can you imagine? Things are already so advanced, and yet things are so brand new. So the technology is, of course, not perfect just yet. Um, Inaccurate answers or strange answers sometimes emerge, distorted answers, and you're thinking, well, that's not quite what I was thinking when I put in this command. So, it could be a little on and off with how accurate the content or how on point the content is that it generates once you've put in your command. And then also the creativity of artists and poets and writers could be used without permission or become redundant. And AI does all the problem solving. So here's my biggest issue. AI does all the problem solving. So, how students develop critical thinking skills, I don't know. Are we doing students a favor by solving all problems at the touch of a button? I think about a friend of mine a few weeks back. She said to me, my son has a project, an assignment he has to hand in. And he's decided to go the AI route. He's going to use ChatGPT to do the entire assignment for him. And he said to his mum, Mum, this is what I'm going to do. And she said to him, do it, go for it. However, if your teacher picks up anything or is not happy with the content you've produced, it's on you. Another thing, if any of that content gets tested in the exams, you're not going to understand the process, you're not going to understand the intricacies of that content, and you might fail the exam, so go for it. Her son's 11. That was scary for me. So when it comes to AI, yes, it can really, really do us a lot of favors, but at the same time, I don't know how much critical thinking is involved in the process. I don't know that students are getting the practice, the stimulation that they need, being able to solve these problems, as we mentioned earlier, at the touch of a button. So we continue with the disadvantages of AI. So remember, we've already spoken about quite a few advantages. We've now moved on to the disadvantages, right? So when we think about AI, and I mentioned this earlier, with assessments like essays and poems, if they are created by AI rather than the student, how does this change the role of the student? How does this change the role of the teacher? Is the role of the teacher reduced? Is the teacher replaceable? The role is minimized. And also, it could really undermine the value of study. Privacy issues like hacking, data used by unscrupulous individuals. But I want to go back to the previous point that it could undermine the value of study. So at the TEFL Academy, for example, we do not allow the use of AI to generate assignments. We feel that this sort of compromises our academic integrity. So we do ask our students that it is, in fact, your own work. So, yes, we are on one hand singing the praises of AI and then also discussing the disadvantages of AI. But that's looking at it from a general perspective. When it comes to our assignments, we do ask, of course, that it's your own work. How you choose to use AI thereafter in your real classrooms or in your lessons, that is up to you. I do, however, recommend lots and lots of research before you do so. So, just to recap those disadvantages, assessments, difficult to track. Um, what is the role of the student? Has that changed? Does AI change that? The role of the teacher, is that replaceable? Is it reduced? And then also the academic integrity of lots of courses and degrees and qualifications out there. And then something very important too, yes, privacy issues, hacking, using data in an irresponsible or illegal way. So lots of things to think about on the positive side. And then, yes, of course, also on the negative side. Right. So, of course, when using AI in the classroom, when the teacher has agreed to use AI and the students are on board, that's one thing. But of course, if students are using it and the teacher has not okayed this, how do teachers detect AI versus human created content? So there are programs out there that lots of institutions are already using. So here we're saying, yes, it's in the teething stages and it's all brand new, but already we've got ways to counter this or to manage it, should I say. So universal AI, this detects a percentage of probability of AI created content. Example, 70% of the content is AI assisted, while 30% is maybe the student's own work. And then GPT essay and assignment checkers. This also gives an accurate AI versus human created content percentage. For example, 90% human, 10% AI. I think that a lot of schools are going to invest in these programs because, yes, teachers would want to know, what do you know and what have you created online? So other programs that detect AI versus human created content. Winston AI, used to detect AI in academic writing, for example, content at scale, GPT-0, text classifier from OpenAI, Pass.ai. So how it works, I'll give you one example, and I found this quite interesting and rather user friendly if you really think about it, is that in one of the examples, you would go onto the site, example, writer.com AI content detector. You would literally copy and paste the student's essay into the add some text field, and you would click on analyze text. And after it's done analyzing, it will come up with the result labeled as AI detection score right at the top of the screen. And I think this is rather user friendly. I mean, there are programs like this out there already that schools and teachers can invest in. Of course, as mentioned, none of these things come for free. So I guess as a teacher, if you're using this in your private capacity for private lessons, you would just have to see how you're going to manage it. Are you going to allocate writing assignments as homework, or will they do that in class, for example? So if you think about AI and how to manage it in the classroom, I mean, there are so many advantages, but also ways to manage these things now. Right. So it's time to really start thinking and start communicating a little bit. And I'd like to get some of your thoughts on AI. I'd like you to start thinking about things. And please, I invite you now to type some of your thoughts in the chat section of your screen. Because remember, today's webinar is it's an exploration. We know some things, you know some things, time to share these things, right? So would you use AI in the classroom to generate content like poems or worksheets, use a speaking app? And if you would use these programs, why? Think about AI logistics and management tools. Would they help you, do you think, to become a more efficient teacher? And also, would you use AI as an assessment tool? So I think it's time to really have this conversation. It's time to have this conversation with yourself. Yes, and also put your answers out there. I think back to another experience where someone I know was at an online school, and the school had invested in a product called Unlock. And what Unlock does is the teacher allocates a piece of writing or some homework that they're going to use as an assessment. And the students would need to type this in. But guess what Unlock does? It scans your face and it scans your eyes and your movement and your voice. And it really watches you so closely so that if you glance away, if you pick up a book, if you do anything other than just sit there and type, it immediately flags you and the teacher can go and check as to what's happening. So, you know what? There are ways to get around it. But I would love, love, love to hear your thoughts. Would you use AI in the classroom to generate content? Please type some answers right now. Would you use it to generate poems, worksheets? Would you use a speaking app in the classroom? If so, why? What is your rationale behind that decision? And then also, yes, AI logistics and management tools, would they help you become a more efficient teacher, do you think? And would you use AI as an assessment tool? So, again, start thinking about these things, type your thoughts into the chat function. And in the interim, I'll give you a little bit of insight as to what I've decided. So, yes, I would use AI in the classroom. I think as teachers, and I see some answers coming in there. Yes, me too. I would absolutely use it in the classroom because you know what, as teachers, we need to develop, we need to move. Being a teacher is about learning and applying what you've learned as well, not only for your students. So, absolutely, I would to generate pieces of text, to generate worksheets. Um, a speaking app, I would have to know a little bit more, but I would absolutely use AI to generate content. Think about it, my planning time would be so greatly reduced. Obviously, pre the lesson and then during the lesson too. And then, of course, yes, do I think AI, logistics and management tools would help me become a more efficient teacher? I think that it would definitely add something to my repertoire. And I think anything teachers can do to upskill themselves, yes, of course, it makes you a more efficient and a more well rounded teacher. So for me, absolutely yes. When it comes to being an assessment tool, I don't know. I think I would still love to give an organic and holistic to have an holistic approach when, for example, listening to a speaking test that students would do. I think that there's a lot more at play than just verbally what they produce. I would need to give some input. So when it comes to my examiner role, I work and I do Cambridge exams, I do the speaking assessment. I am absolutely necessary there because you know what I take into account? Nerves. What else I take into account is stress. What else I take into account is just, not feeling that great that day. So if my students are experiencing all those things, I feel that I can pick that up and I can take it into consideration when I grade what they produce. So I think yes and no. I would use it as an assessment tool, but I would really, really take into consideration what my students are feeling. So I've got a few ideas here. I've got a few thoughts. A lot of you are saying yes. Um, you would use it in the classroom. Abbas says, yes, absolutely. Emma, I would use it in the classroom, yes. And then let's see, Zach has said, I'd use a speaking app because it can help the students with learning of pronunciation and it would allow me to help with that also. Why not? So if you can incorporate this into your lesson and manage it and facilitate it, monitor the use, Zach, I agree with you. Absolutely. Eliani from Brazil says yes, they would use it too. Abbas, I agree with you. Perhaps overusing of it is not good. I think so too. I think everything in moderation. And also, a lot of my students want that teacher input. I am, in addition to being a teacher, I'm a language learner too. I'm trying to learn another language. And when I go to classes, I really appreciate that my teacher is there and my teacher knows what I'm going through. And my teacher knows, okay, that response was limited or restrictive because the person is feeling nervous or the person is not feeling great. So I think yes, there is a limit. So Abbas, I agree with you. Using it, great. Overusing it, not so much. Gloria says yes, I would use it. Yeah, lots and lots of positive comments. And then let's see what Sarah has said. I absolutely agree that it could greatly reduce the time spent doing research. Yes, to find just the right creative tools. Sarah, I agree with you 100%. And of course, yes, as a teacher, you would notify students that this was, generated because your students might go and look for something like that online, not find it. So absolutely, that to have that transparency in class, yes. All right, and then all right, money question. Tracy asks, I think about how many schools do not have money to buy these programs. If you as a teacher buy a program to use in your classroom on your own, who is paying whom? Tracy, this is such a general question, and I think that while some schools, yes, as you've said, can afford it, others can't. A lot of teachers do purchase resources that they use on their own in classes at schools that cannot necessarily afford them. And then some of them maybe share the costs with other teachers. Some of them approach the school to pay some of the cost. So yes, this would depend very much on a particular situation, but it is done in some schools. Yeah. And then let's see, I've got another comment here from Mike. I would use AI as assistance to reduce the time that I have to work on preparing materials. I agree with you, absolutely. I think that while we put our essence and our feels and all those things into the lesson, if our planning time can be reduced by finding something just right for our classes, then absolutely. Yes. I like this comment. Some students write better than they speak. It is important to keep that in mind before comparing speech to written work and checking with AI. I do agree with you. Some of those skills and what students can produce across the board of skills is just so vast. A student who can speak well doesn't necessarily have very good listening skills. A student who listens very well might not be able to output and produce a very good piece of writing, and so on. So, absolutely, I think that using AI just to check in general might be a bit risky. You would still very much have to be involved in that assessment. Yes. And then we've got another comment here. I love all these comments, just by the way, because I find that while, yes, we're trying to educate with the webinar, we're learning from each other, and that's a great experience. John says, I will use it in assisting generating class content and to assist the development of speaking and pronunciation. I would need to assess the cost, yes. Should no financial support be offered by the school? Absolutely. That's why I said go on to those various sites that I put on the screen earlier, check them out, see what the financial implications are, and then also see what the school is willing to offer if they don't have anything like this in place. All right, and that was in response, I think, to one of Tracy's questions. Yes. All right, so yes, we've been discussing your thoughts as well, and that's not the end of it. I would still like to know how you're feeling about the whole thing. So there are a few more points that I'd like to discuss with you. And yes, we've got a few of them on the board right now. And this is so interesting for me, will the EFL teacher be replaced by AI technology, apps, and interactive sites? What are your thoughts there? Please start typing your thoughts in immediately. I need to see how you're feeling about this. Is the human element an important feature in EFL teaching? And as mentioned earlier, I'm trying to learn another language. And for me personally, yes, absolutely. I need my teacher there. But I was wondering at the start of it all, is it an age thing? Because I'm a bit older, some of the students are a bit younger, and I started talking to my colleagues in the classroom, younger, older, and just to see how they were all feeling, and they all felt the way I did. Thank goodness that the teacher has got an integral role. The teacher is the core of that classroom. And I think that's great news, not only for myself, but for all of you out there today, is that the students were pretty much feeling that, yes, AI is a great supplementary facet to add to the classroom, but the teacher is still the irreplaceable part of the learning experience. That is what I've gathered. But what are your thoughts? And then also, is AI less intimidating for students than a real teacher? And then another one, do you think that AI robots could be teaching face to face lessons in the near future? So, of course, a few of you, I'm sure, have been reading up about AI, watching documentaries the way I have, listening to others, asking people questions. So, please, yes, if you've got any insight into any of these points that I've raised right now, type them once again in the chat function of your screen. So let's just rehash. Will the EFL teacher be replaced by AI technology? Um, is the human element still an important feature in EFL teaching? Is AI less intimidating for students than a real teacher? And do you think AI robots could be teaching face-to-face lessons in the near future? Now, remember that a few years ago, this all sounded like absolute sci-fi. And yet, here we are today having this discussion. So I would say, and I'm very happy that I'm seeing a few comments coming in that pretty much agree with me, that the teacher is still very important in the classroom. So let's see. I've got a comment from Laura. A teacher is the most important. I agree. Humans need humans. And I think that's a great, great point right there. It's what I experience as a student in a language class. So I'm kind of hoping that my students and our students feel exactly the same. Let's put some more of your comments on the screen. So Emma says human element is important as language learning involves learning nuances and culture perspectives of the language. Yes, please. There will be people who just want to learn the words, so they may opt for AI solely. So if I think about our language schools, they're full and people are traveling to learn. And also with TEFL, remember, it's about traveling also. And there are just some things AI cannot replace. So a lot of people are still traveling to learn English. And thank goodness for that. We have work. And also, yes, that human element. Of course, yes, like Emma has said, there are students who want to opt for the 100% just learning the words, and they may opt for AI. But I will say that in my experience, so far so good for us teachers. Right, so let's see. Gloria sent us a comment also. I think within 10 years, AI will have the ability to design a lesson, teach it, and assess it. It will certainly replace online teaching. I think that, yes, I agree with part of that statement. And then part of me wants to say no, because an online lesson really should mimic a face-to-face lesson. Just the content is different, and maybe the way we assess. but still the teacher is the core of the lesson. The teacher, the student, and that interaction is still very much part of the process. Because I always say to teachers, they always say, how is online different? How are online lessons different? And I say, you know what? Except for the computer screen, they're not. You still need to give that human connection. And a lot of my students, when I ask them, what did you enjoy about the online lesson? What did you appreciate about the lesson? They said that there was a teacher listening, looking, watching my face. So I feel, yes, AI most likely will be able to do those things, but I still hope that teachers have a role for that human touch, the way Laura mentioned a little bit earlier. All right. So when it comes to AI, we've been discussing our thoughts. We've been talking about how we feel. We've been talking about, I think, some of our predictions too. And I think that the ideas that you've been sharing are ever so valid. So please, if you do have any more ideas, any more thoughts, any answers to these questions that I've been posting up here today, please type them in because I will absolutely try to address them. And then I've got a question from Tracy, and I'm going to throw, Tracy, if you don't mind, I'm going to throw this question back at the group listening today. Tracy says, will schools eventually be replaced? What are your thoughts? So we've got, if you look at the last point on our screen, it says, do you think AI robots could be teaching face-to-face lessons in the near future? Um, is the human element still an important feature in EFL teaching? I think that all these kind of culminate in this question. So if any of you have any thoughts on that, will schools eventually be replaced? So I think that we've got Abbas, you've sent us a comment. Human element could never be replaced by AI. Even if AI is well designed, it couldn't replace the human touch. I agree with you. I also find that when I have lessons, online lessons, even in an online setting, I gauge how my students are feeling and very often how they feel and what they've experienced prior to the lesson um, influences and affects and impacts what they produce in that lesson. And only as a teacher, as a human being, can I understand exactly what they're going through. And that is how I gauge and also how I go forward with what I'm going to push, what I'm going to withhold, what I'm going to prompt, where I pick my battles. It's got a lot to do with that human interaction. But I think that Tracy's comment or the question is completely valid because years ago, we didn't think that all this would be possible. Right. And then we've got a comment from Gloria. We are taking this lesson online and we are learning online with next to no human input. Whole universities are online. I do not think language learning will be any different. Yes, we are taking this lesson online, but I'm here. Real person, not a real fake, not a deep fake. But I see your point, Gloria. There are so many universities, schools that have a completely online option. As far as I know, most of them still have face-to-face online teachers, and the students are not left entirely to their own devices. And when they write exams, they've got to go in to do the assessment. When classes are delivered, they're delivered by an actual teacher online. Whether this will change in the near future or not, I guess we'll just have to watch. We'll just have to see. All right. Let's see. Another comment has come in. To tie in with point 3 on our screen, AI will be less intimidating than some teachers. But sadly, yes. But I think that as we train as teachers, learn not to be intimidating. Our lessons are meant to be welcoming. Our classes are meant to be engaging and interesting. And also, we've got to learn that when our learners make mistakes, it's okay. Treat the mistake as a learning experience and help the student rather than make them feel self-conscious. So when it comes to feeling intimidated, I totally see your point. There are situations out there or teachers out there that are intimidating or make students feel bad about making mistakes, and we don't want that. So of course, in an AI situation, that won't be a factor. So again, yes, I do agree with you that AI can be less intimidating than some teachers out there. Abbas, thank you for your comment. All right, so let's see another one from Mike. And actually, I really appreciate this one. I've been teaching, so this is sort of not a question. It's not, just an assessment of what's happening. But coming from a bit of experience, I've been teaching for about 1 year to young learners. And in my experience, or in my previous experience, teaching online and in person, most of them don't like online classes. I had the same experience in my home. When my son had been learning online for a while, we gave him the choice. We said, well, the pandemic, while it's not 100% over, things are more manageable. What do you want to do? And he said, please send me back to school. I need teachers. I need students. I need someone to come and stand by my desk and help me when I feel stuck. That for me just set off all kinds of interesting feelings because yes, it was something that told me that that human touch is still very much important. Thanks for sharing, Mike. Caroline says no emotions from AI, so fairly boring for everyone. I don't know. I guess yes. If you think about AI, the intelligence is there, but where's the emotion? So we'll have to see how that goes. But yeah, I think that a lot of people feel the way you do, Caroline. All right. And then we've got a comment from Sarah, living in Turkey. I tried to learn the language just with apps. I knew the grammar, but could not speak. I needed a teacher. Yeah, I do feel that probably a lot of people feel the way you do. So, yeah, that was my experience too. When I had to go home and learn things by myself, I was left to my own devices. I needed someone to steer me in the right direction. But then, of course, on the other end, there were some things that I could very much learn on my own. But I think that we're not so much talking about what we can learn on our own versus what we are learning in a classroom. Because Gloria says, but this is the only part of the whole course that we have any personal content. We could take the whole TEFL course with no content. Now, remember, learning online and doing an online course, yes, that's one aspect, but AI is where someone else is doing the teaching or a computer is doing the teaching, so to speak. So, a slightly different facet that we're discussing today. But yes, a lot of courses out there are done purely online. And a lot of people feel that there should be more human or face to face interaction. Hence, us creating these weekly webinars, our weekend courses, and so on. So, yes, I completely see your point about online courses going through content that has been created for you online. But I think the conversation we're having today is artificial intelligence and learning via artificial intelligence rather than or using it in the classroom, completing work using it. So a slightly different aspect that we're discussing today. But yes, I totally understand your point that you can learn a lot on your own, and hopefully a lot of people out there still feel the need for that human touch, as lots of you have mentioned. Right. Ah, AI teaching face to face, why not? I mean, yeah, it would be interesting. I watched a documentary not too long ago where people were in a religious space and they were using ChatGPT and a robot to deliver the sermon the sermon, and that was quite interesting for me. And people were feeling a little I don't know about it. So that was another aspect that I found quite interesting. Yeah, so go out there, watch as many documentaries as you can. Really, really interesting information. Right. So we're going to move on to Q&A, but I think that very much today's presentation was half of it was Q&A or sharing comments. Um, so I think that, yeah, you are more than welcome to ask questions. Those that I can answer, absolutely, I will answer. And then, of course, if any of you know the answers to the questions been asked by people on the panel today, yes, please, please send us your information. Please send us your answers. We're more than happy to read them out. Because today's webinar is a little different. It's about exploration. It's about having this conversation. It's about sharing what we know and what we've discovered so far. Sharing good experiences, sharing knowledge, sharing fears, sharing anxieties around all of this. Because I think that if we do realize that it's something that we can manage, something that we can use in a positive way, then yeah, it takes the fear out of the whole situation and makes it quite pleasurable. So please, yes, if you have any questions, please send them along. I'll be more than happy to assist. Gloria has sent us a question, and I'm going to project that on the board. Thank you very much for that question. How can you use AI for marking assignments? That would save a lot of time. Right. So at the TEFL Academy, for example, we mark your assignments. I mark your assignments. I'm sure I've marked a couple of your assignments on the screen today. So we mark your assignments. However, yes, I do know that there are systems out there that can do assessments and do marking. And yes, that would save a lot of time. And when it comes, I think, Gloria, when it comes to just checking accuracy, right? Yeah, I think that those programs would be absolutely useful. However, when it comes to a subject like English, where there, as we mentioned earlier, there are nuances or there's appropriacy, and that sort of thing, then of course, yes, the teacher would have to jump in and get involved there. But if anyone knows about programs for marking assignments, for marking text, for marking work, please put your answers in the chat facility on your screen, and maybe we can share a little bit more information about that. So the question is how can you use AI for marking assignments? That would save a lot of time. Gloria, I don't know if you feel the way I do. I'm not a fan of marking lengthy, wordy texts. I don't know if you feel the same, but I do not like it. And I do know it's absolutely necessary. So if I could have any kind of assistance with that, yes, it would be fantastic, especially when it comes to assessing the accuracy in the student's work. Not so much the tone or the register, but maybe more the accuracy. So if any of you have any input on that, yes, please share. All right, and then Mike, yes, sorry, I didn't get in with my real name, but my real name is Musa. Nice to meet you. All right, and then we also have another comment from CG. I agree with human face-to-face interaction. It's always better. I think that a lot of people feel the way you do, CG. I know I do, but I also know that the world is changing. So as teachers, yes, we learn as much as we can, and we integrate these new things into our lessons to make them less scary and to make them more mainstream in our classrooms, right? Okay, are there any other questions? Because now is the time to put them in. Right, so I've also got a comment from John. My degree was a blended course of classroom and self-led learning. I much preferred the classroom with the input of a tutor and other students. I'm really unsure that AI-led learning would be for me. Yeah, I think that when I do the weekend courses, a lot of you doing the level 5 course will also have the opportunity to do a weekend course or a Saturday course in your respective towns, villages, cities. And a lot of the students that come to me afterwards say, you know what, the online content is so amazing. I'm learning lots. Couldn't do without it, but wow, I really enjoyed this face-to-face interaction because it kind of answered all my questions. It put all that text into perspective and into context for me. So I'm always very happy to get that kind of input. So yeah, John, I tend to think that I agree with you. There are lots of people that do. But as I mentioned earlier, yes, this is all about learning and befriending something new, and then, yes, integrating it into the lesson just to make it more mainstream. All right. And then I've got a comment or question from Emma. If the assignments are multiple choice, it would be easy to use AI in marking. Exactly what I said earlier, Emma. If the assessment is just accuracy based, like the answer is either right or it's wrong, then yes, I can also see the sense in using AI to mark. However, You mentioned in written work, perhaps co-use AI. I agree with you because when it comes to producing a piece of text, very often your students, they put something in there. And we mentioned them earlier, tone, intention, nuance, all kinds of other language devices outside of just wrong or right. And that I agree with you is when teachers need to be part of the marking process. All right. Any other comments? Any other questions? Yes, please share. I'm more than happy to address. We still have 5 minutes. This is such an interesting topic and somewhat undirected in a sense because all sorts of ideas and questions come up in a webinar such as this. So if you have any, please type them in the chat. We still have a few minutes to answer questions, of course. All right. And then when it comes to comments, yes, please, if they are relevant, I'm going to put them up on the screen. Annie has sent us a comment saying the speaking human face can also be distracting. I guess if you are a learner that is more inclined to text or listening, then yes, someone talking to you might be distracting. Um, with AI, I guess with various programs out there, it depends on what I'm not quite sure. Are you talking about in a normal classroom setting, Annie, where someone talking is distracting, or are you referring to an online lesson where someone is distracting? Just maybe elaborate a little bit there. Um, and then, yeah, we can definitely jump in with our thoughts and questions. All right. Any other questions that you may have, put them in. We still have a few minutes before we wrap up and before we say goodbye. So I would love to answer any questions you have, or at least if I cannot answer them, put them out and maybe someone else on our panel today can actually answer them too. And I'm going through the older ones just to see if I've actually missed anything. I think someone mentioned earlier, is using AI cheating? And legally, I guess it depends on what you're meant to produce. If, for example, you are using AI to generate answers that you are meant to come up with 100%, your academic institution might see it as cheating. If they've allowed AI to some extent, yes, you need to do a little bit of research and see to what extent you're allowed to use it. With the TEFL Academy, I can only speak from our perspective. With assignments, no, we do not allow AI generated content. We do need your thoughts, your essence, your input, and your knowledge culminated into the assignments and into the various tasks that we have online. Of course, if you're using AI to find answers or to explore something a little bit further, yes, that is up to you, and you're more than welcome to do so. But when you submit your work, yes, it does need to be your work and sourced from. We give guidance, lots of guidance as to where you're meant to source your work from, your resources, your exercises, whether you're meant to create them by yourself, that sort of thing. So absolutely try as far as you can to do your own work. I think lots of schools are sort of singing that song these days, and yeah, we're one of them for now. All right, so I think we've come to the end of our very interesting webinar today. I am so happy that we've had this conversation. I think it's it's a vital conversation to have these days. We grow, we learn with our students. I often say that being a teacher, the most amazing thing about being a teacher is the learning experience that we all get to enjoy. Abbas, I'm very happy you enjoyed the session today. I feel pretty much the same. Thank you for sharing all your insight and all your thoughts, your questions, your opinions. Really, really an amazing experience to have this conversation with all of you. And you know what? I feel like we should continue having this conversation. This webinar, we'll definitely be having another webinar on AI further down the line. And who knows, by then, more information may come to light. So stay tuned, keep watching. Also remember that this webinar will be available a few days from today. So if you missed anything, if you've forgotten to take down a few notes today and you want to go back and rewatch, yes, please find the webinar, send us a message on tutor support. If you can't, we'll send you the link for all the webinars, not only today's, but all the past webinars too. But remember that today's will only be available within a few days or so. All right. The last thing I'm going to ask you to do is to fill in our survey. I know that a lot of you fill in the survey on a weekly basis. It helps us. It helps us fine tune our webinar program just to include information that is useful for you, but also to get your thoughts. Gloria, Emma, CG, Eliani, all of you who sent comments, so useful, questions, so valid. Keep doing that every single time you join the webinars. Your thoughts, your ideas, equally informative, amazing, really, really nicely done. So that's the survey link. If you cannot fill it in right now, just at least save it in your browser so that you can go back to it at a later stage. I'm also going to put the survey on the screen. Thank you for joining, and I'll see you next time. Tune in, same time next week for another interesting webinar. Have a wonderful weekend and stay safe out there.